I'm Colleen Brooks. We are doing a Hope and Healing recital, and one of the pieces on the program that I'm super excited about is called Songs for Andy. Shortly after my brother had passed away, Andy Brooks, I was looking for a way to help my mom. And what can you do, right? Nothing. What can you do for someone who has a loss, especially the loss of a loved one, loss of a child, right? Nothing. But I wanted to do something nonetheless. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I could make a music piece. And I don't compose, but I started thinking about what types of texts I would want to include and who I would get to write it. And
I had this realization in church, and after that church service, I was speaking with James's grandmother, who happens to go to my church. And on that particular Sunday, James's mother was also visiting. Both of them are fantastic musicians. So we were chatting about music, and I felt compelled to share with them that I had just decided that I needed to write a song cycle. And they felt compelled to share with me in turn that I needed to hire their son and grandson to write the music.
the universe told me, I think because of James's mother's energy and because of James's grandmother's formidableness, intensity, the universe told me, yes, I should hire James.
My name is James Daly. I wrote and will be performing the piano part in Songs for Andy. My grandmother lives in Milwaukee, goes to the same church as Colleen, and my mom was in town visiting my grandmother. She just has this really intense energy, and she just told Colleen, she's like, my son is a composer and he should do your project for you. And Colleen, she was with it, so she contacted me.
I did, we'd never met, and he sent me a piece of his that was lovely. I said, great, done.
We are so thrilled to be here today. Thank you for spending a good chunk of your morning with us. I'm Colleen Brooks. I am on the voice faculty at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and I would like to introduce you to my friend and colleague, James Daly. He's a pianist, a composer, and founder of the San Ramon Academy of Music in California.
The idea came that I wanted each of the song titles to be a noun that described my brother, that described Andy. So we came up with will, heart, humor, courage, and brotherhood. The text started coming in, and James and I kept emailing about the project.
I wrote, ironically, the last piece that we performed in the cycle, but the first one, Brotherhood, in that period.
There were 2 long periods of time that James and I were out of touch, even though we knew we were still going to do this project together. Just for reasons of life, James was opening his studio and entering weightlifting competitions. And I was having twins and dealing with life after having twins.
But it wasn't really until a couple of years later, when COVID kind of stopped everyone's lives in their tracks, that we reconnected. I said, hey, what are you up to? He's like, nothing. What are you up to? Nothing.
Well, COVID kept doing COVID's thing, so we kind of had to put it off. But it was really, really helpful because I feel like I grew a lot as a person, as a composer, as an educator. I think that I had better tools to express what I wanted to. Just go through it, talk about the text with Colleen, and really make as deep of an emotive connection between text and music and what Colleen wanted to express with the project.
Dude, that part sounds so sick. Oh my gosh, I love that.
So we started meeting weekly on Zoom, and he really welcomed me into his compositional process, which I could not be more grateful for.
It was so hard not to be like, oh,
it was just a really beautiful experience.
The timbre of the instrument is like a virtuosic quality, I think. Like when I play the piano, like a D is just a D. But you can sing that D a gajillion different ways, right?
So many things came up that we ended up talking about, and it was during COVID, and we weren't seeing our traditional friends, our regular friends, and so we just talked through everything. We talked through these pieces for Andy, which I came to find out were also very personally meaningful to James.
Before I'd been asked to do the pieces, I lost my brother Theo, so it's something that I still haven't personally fully gotten over. And actually right before COVID, a year before, my stepbrother Mark took his life. And it was a really man, it was just tough. And so to be given the opportunity to kind of put those, I guess, unresolved feelings, put them in an ornately decorated box of music, I think was something very, very special to me.
I felt like I started this for my mom and didn't realize how much I needed it until we were working through things, and then James was letting me just
lead into
kind of
this, right?
sit in.
So
we
I
were
would
just
do
Zooming, and
like
he was
the,
composing, and I was working on texts and kind of just hanging out over Zoom, and I didn't realize how much I needed this whole process and how I liked thinking about, well, what would Andy think of this text, and which of these texts feels more like Andy, and what would he think about that? And
even in like the setting of my harmony, like I would sit there and we'd be on Zoom and I would like compose over Zoom with her, and I'm like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? Well, the text says this. And then when I think about this key,
this flute, we should throw a fermata on this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
for Colleen to show like that amount of trust in me was something like so personal. Like this is about, you know, her brother and someone that means so much to her, and to be given the opportunity to write music about that reflects someone like that. I don't know, it's very humbling, very humbling.
The more that you play music, I think the deeper that you can go into that feeling and into that, I guess, cathartic process. You can safely put the feelings into something positive.
we didn't want the cycle to be just for people who knew my brother or James's brothers, right? We wanted it to really be for all who have experienced loss or all who are grieving. And again, we're writing this piece during the COVID global pandemic, right? So we realized very quickly that was the entire world. Song for Andy, and the whole recital is really for everyone in the whole world at this point, right? Whether or not you've lost a relative, we've all lost a lot during COVID, right? We've lost opportunities, people have lost jobs. So a lot has been taken from everyone, and so I just wanted this recital to be a way that we could kind of help each other through that.
Well, I think the idea of loss is something that like really everyone can empathize with, you know, because we've all lost something or someone. So it was just a very cathartic experience. I mean, writing music in general has like always been like that for me. I would say that's why it's such a personal piece of work for me. So the whole cycle is comprised of 5 different pieces, and they're all in 5 different languages. Oh my gosh.
Is there a period here at the end?
There is, yes.
That's a part of this piece that's very special to me, is that we decided to translate 4 of the pieces into foreign languages.
What about an exclamation mark? No, I'm just kidding.
James did not know that when he price quoted me at the beginning of this project. But he was up for the challenge.
Justo. So I actually moved like instead of the... Okay, yeah. The first one, will, is Italian. The second one, heart, is in French. The third one, humor, is in Russian. The fourth one, courage, is in German. And the fifth one, brotherhood, is in English. So Colleen actually did all the libretto. So she like organized the text, and then it was so much fun writing for these different languages because I don't speak it, but I had her write in the text like points of emphasis so that it would make sense to a native speaker. So she would be like, okay, so this is like a stress vowel, so this should be on like a 1 or a 3. And then it was kind of like musical Tetris in a way, where I had like all these different shapes and ideas. And it was so funny. I'd have like each part of the text and I'd put it into Google Translate, and I'd listen to like the robot voice. Like just hearing the syllabic content, and then in relation to what she wrote for emphasis, it really like allowed me to have a framework to work with when I wanted to set the text to a melody, and how I decided to ultimately go about that. So Colleen was so helpful.
Oh, thank you, dude. That was, fire. Wow.
So it was really interesting because I wasn't just asking her, okay, in terms of like, oh, are these notes easy to sing? Is this within your vocal range? But more so, how does this music make you feel? Which I think leads to the style of composition that I chose to employ in the pieces. You know what? Why don't I just make a piano concerto within an art song?
This is some really crazy hard music, but it is really satisfying. So I think some of the hardest parts are some of the most satisfying parts. I happened to tell James that I was really good at coloratura. That was a mistake.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Singers are so interesting.
Because James wrote some gnarly stuff. And my pride, right, and it's in the piece called Will. So in honor of my brother and his will, and in honor of me and my will, which I got from my brother, I was like, I will do this. I will figure it out. No matter how much I have to drill this or create new vocal techniques or whatever, I will figure it out. So that's one of my favorite parts. Not only is it wicked fast, but it like alternates between groups of threes and groups of fours, and so there's triples and duples and everything in between. I think there's a 7, which was also my mistake. But I offered that at one point and he liked it, so now there's a group of 7 in there.
Like this bottom, that little bottom thing.
Heart, it's just lush and gorgeous and romantic. And
I got this texture idea from this song by Ravel.
It's just based off of 2 chords.
I'm not gonna say the French because you laugh at my French, but it means boat on the ocean. And there's just like this 2-bar little part in there, and just this epic, like you're on a boat on the ocean. It's pretty tight. And just to have that texture and that idea, and then totally deviate into my own thing, but have this little piece of history and this little piece of music that has meant so much to me personally, and then to be able to express it in my way, I find like really satisfying.
Well, I do not consider myself a writer. So I was planning on just gathering all of the texts. All of the poetry that we were finding really focused on the romantic qualities and components of heart. Since I wasn't finding what I was looking for, I had to really step back and say, well, what are you looking for? And because of this challenge, and because I've had some students at UWM start just writing on their own, creating some really cool things, I felt inspired to give it a shot. My brother was a surgeon, so I decided to start with really primal physiological functions or roles of the heart. And what I was looking for in this piece was more the meaning, if I were to say, my brother had heart, or she or they have heart.
The song Humor, I really had fun with. There's this part in there where it goes to a waltz. I mean, the whole thing is in 3 basically. It's a waltz the whole time, but where it's like a really obvious waltz, but I put in the tempo, like tempo alla Marcia, which means tempo like a march, but a march is in 2. You can't like march in 3, it'd be like super awkward. I mean, you could try.
In some way in this piece. So in Humor here, something that's really emblematic of Russian music is called a Prokofiev slip, which is something that I love. He just does this thing where he's like, all right, we're going up a half step, or we're going down a half step, and it's like the most random thing, but it sounds so cool. It sounds so cool. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna try that.
So like little things like that where, you know, I love the history of music. I love the history of composition. So to be able to engage with it on that level is really cool for me, yeah. Courage, super long, and it's in German. I always think of music and color as like there's direct correlation between certain curias and certain colors. And it was really fun to be like, oh, well, this part's talking about being golden. So I would love to write this part in like G flat major, because I always see F, G flat, and G as like different hues of yellow. So I'd love to bring that out. And she's like, okay, so how would that sound? And then like I play a few different modulations to get to the G flat, you know, and then we kind of settle on what really got across the message that we wanted.
But I was listening in my car to this pop song, and this goes so hard, like what is happening here? So I got home, I figured it out, the progression, and I was like, what's she doing with the melody? And I was like, wait, this is just like a pentatonic scale. So I was like, you know, it'd be really sick to write using like a pop pentatonic scale sort of vibe. That would be dope if I could do that in the context of a Bach chorale. So
one of my favorite parts is there's this part in septuplets, which is like groups of 7. And I got the idea from Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto, and it's like this swimming, beautiful texture, and like Colleen's part is kind of like the violin melody within the beginning of the piano texture, the first movement of Rock 2. And it was just so cool to have like a direct inspiration for something and then like kind of turn it into my own thing.
they're all really unique. They're all really committed to the language we decided and committed to the theme and the title that we decided on. I feel like there are places that are really pushing the art form of art song. It's exciting to be a part of that. It's just really challenged me to be a better musician. And instead of, well, this is the way it's always done, right? Like, well, let's try something that's cooler in this case.
I feel like a lot of modern classical music is, I mean, classical music in general is like really alienating. And I think that's why we don't have a lot of people that look like me within the genre of music, you know what I'm saying?
I think that as musicians we get imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't deserve to be there. You feel like you're always trying to measure up to something. And in particular, as a classical musician of color, there's like very few of us. So personally, like a lack of access and just cultural relationship to classical music kind of deters young people, in particular people like myself, people of color.
I think that a lot of composers modern day are kind of almost fearful of comparison to these great composers. I mean, because they are literal, like their music has stood the test of time, and it's been here for hundreds of years, probably be for hundreds past that. So they kind of like delve into absurdity almost for absurdity's sake. And for me, I just want to write pretty music. And it seems kind of simple, but that's really what it is. You know, I don't think the works are perfect, but I was so focused on the emotive content within this that it's just continuing like rising and falling within the music of emotion. And there's definitely like these high point moments within each one of the pieces that I'm just like really, really fond of.
See you guys soon.
The arts are an essential and integral part of the human experience. But then I thought, you all know that. You're here. But then I started thinking about the power of art and what it can do to us and for us. And as Colleen and her colleagues are going to show us tonight, it can also heal.
So that's really meaningful. It does put the pressure on a little bit.
It's imperfect, my music, I would say, but I'm imperfect. Despite the imperfection, the emotion is like so palpable that you can't help but be moved.
It's kind of like singing in church. When the meaning of what you're sharing is so meaningful to the people listening, it really mostly takes the pressure off because everybody already is on board with what you want to share.
Treat. James said his work has only been done 4 times. I've heard them twice. It's stunning. You are going to love it so much. So on behalf of James and me, composers on today's program, please enjoy the show, and we will see you afterwards.